Brian, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Graham, and hello, everybody. Welcome to Let's Cook Raw. I'm Brian Hetrick, and I'm super excited to be a part of this community. I just love the concept of Let's Cook Raw and building a community of health-conscious people from all over the world and learning new techniques and new recipes. So today we're going to be making Italian stuffed mushrooms. So you'll need about a pound of these baby portobello mushrooms, about 2 inches in diameter. Now these are a little bit larger. These are baby portobello mushrooms that are specifically marketed for stuffing. So these are about 3 inches in diameter. And the first step is we're going to destem the mushrooms. So for doing that, I place the mushroom on the cutting board, and then using a small knife, I'm going to kind of hollow it out a little bit. So I'm going around the perimeter like this. And then we're going to save the stems. We're going to use the stems in the recipe, so I'm going to place them in a separate bowl. So what I like to do is I like to the mushrooms. So you can kind of see that I've trimmed a bit around the edges, and I've also, gone beyond just cutting off the stems, but I've kind of hollowed out the inside like this. And then we're going to set aside our baby bella mushrooms and do the rest in the exact same way, like this. I think it's somewhat appropriate that we're doing Italian stuffed mushrooms. We're in Villanova today, which is just a few miles away from the mushroom capital of the world, which is in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania. There's a huge number of mushroom farms in the Kennett Square area that supplies most of the United States with mushrooms. There we go. So if you're using the 2-inch diameter baby bella mushrooms, 1 pound will come out to about 20 of these guys. If you're using these larger ones for stuffing, which are about 3.5 inches in diameter, you wind up with about a dozen of these mushrooms for stuffing. It doesn't really matter so much about the size in this case. By the way, anybody know why the mushroom kept getting invited back to parties? Because he's a fun guy. Okay, that's my mushroom joke for today. We have to tell vegetable jokes here on Let's Cook Raw to keep it nice and light. So the other tools that we'll be using today, besides the knife and the cutting board, will be the food processor with the S-blade and the Vitamix blender. Okay, so you see we're making a nice little boat out of the mushrooms. Last one. I like to do this on the cutting board as opposed to holding the mushroom in my hand, in case the knife goes a little too deep and pushes out the other side. That way I'm preventing injuries here. There we go. Okay, the next step is we're going to place our mushroom stems in the food processor. So I'm using a Cuisinart 11 cup food processor with the S-blade. Typically these food processors come with 3 or 4 different kinds of blades. The S-blade and also the shredding blade. And then you have a mixing blade for making typically kneading dough. And you also will have a slicing blade for making thin slices of apples and things like that. We're going to be using the S-blade today. Place that in. And all of my mushroom stems are going to go into the food processor. So I use the food processor in this case for chopping, and I use the blender, the Vitamix or the Blendtec, for liquefying foods and things like that. I actually know of a chef who doesn't even use the blender, doesn't use a Vitamix. So he'll use the food processor exclusively. And he'll actually make green smoothies in the food processor, and it works. So food processors are typically less expensive than these high power blenders and more easily available. So to the mushroom stems that we put in the food processor, we're going to add some sunflower seeds, just 1/4 cup. Now these sunflower seeds have been soaked. That releases the enzyme inhibitors and makes them more easily digestible. So 1/4 cup of the sunflower seeds. You really only need to soak them for a few hours. 3 or 4 hours is fine. And then 1/4 cup of pumpkin seeds that have also been soaked for 3 or 4 hours. This is about 1/4 cup there. And then we're going to add 1 cup of celery root into the food processor, along with the mushroom stems and the sunflower seeds and the pumpkin seeds.
Brian, what's the reason for celeriac root?
Oh, so celeriac root tastes a bit like celery. It's got a bit of an earthy taste to it as well, more so than just regular celery, which obviously grows above the ground. Celery root grows below the ground. Celery root, as celery does, adds the salty flavor to the dish here. And what we're going to do is we're going to peel. You could do this with a knife, or if you have a peeler, you can actually use the peeler. Hang on 1 second, let me grab my peeler. So typically the skin of fruits and vegetables have a bitter taste to them. And this is the way plants help to repel insects. And then the meat inside is going to be sweeter. And the skin of fruits and vegetables also tend to be tougher as well for the same reason. Because fruits and vegetables can't run away from bugs the way we can. They're kind of stuck in one place. Okay, so I'm just peeling my celery root. And this will go into the compost. And the top we're going to put into the compost as well. And then we're going to rough cut into about 1 inch or 1/2 inch chunks our celery root. You don't have to actually chop it up real fine. We just want to chop it up small enough so that we can approximate 1 cup amount. Okay, that's 1 cup of celery root, celiac, and then we're going to do the same thing with carrots. We're going to rough cut them into about 1/2 inch or 1 inch chunks. So I've already kind of washed and peeled my carrots ahead of time. carrots are, they're kind of sweet. So they're going to add the sweet flavor to our recipe here today. Okay, so we have a little bit extra left over. It won't go to waste. Okay, and then we're going to add 1 clove of garlic. So I like to, for peeling the garlic, I like to place it on the cutting board like this, and then taking a large chef knife, just place it on top of the garlic, and then using the heel of your hand, press down and crush the garlic, and then the peel comes off much easier this way. And we're going to put a couple of sprigs of fresh rosemary into the food processor. This is from my garden that I picked just a short time ago.
I mentioned, I don't have the food processor. And what I actually do, I use this tool.
Oh, yes. So this is a great idea. So here we have a grater, a hand grater. And if you don't have the food processor to kind of chop up your carrots and your celery root, you can use this. So the goal here is that we want to chop our vegetables to about rice-sized pieces like this. So I'm using the finest setting on the grater to create these little shavings of the celery root. And you can do the same thing with the carrots. When it comes to the seeds, the sunflower seeds and the pumpkin seeds, you can also do that just with a chef knife. You can place a pile here on the cutting board like this. And just kind of chop them this way. Until you have something that resembles the size of rice, like that. Okay, we're going to pop that into the blender as well. So I'm going to save a little bit of the fresh rosemary for a garnish. Okay, we'll save the rest. And then we're going to add a little bit of ground cumin. So just a quarter of a teaspoon of cumin. This. And then I'm going to use some Italian seasoning. And we're going to use a tablespoon of Italian seasoning. So Italian seasoning is typically a combination of herbs such as basil and rosemary and marjoram and thyme and oregano and sage. And then we're going to add a little bit of mustard seed powder, just a quarter of a teaspoon. Okay, so in the food processor, we have our carrots and we have our mushroom stems, we have the celery root, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, and we have a clove of garlic, 1 tablespoon of Italian seasoning, 1/4 of a teaspoon of cumin, 1/4 teaspoon of mustard seed with the S blade, and we're going to make a little bit of noise. Here we go. So you may have to kind of stop this and scrape the sides a little bit. A couple of times. You want this to be relatively dry, so I'm not going to add any water to this, but I want the consistency of rice specks. One more time, I'm going to scrape the sides a little bit. All right, so anyway, welcome back, everybody. This is take 2 of our Italian stuffed mushrooms. And I'm Brian Hetrick, and we're actually going to be starting with 1 pound of baby portobello mushrooms, which are going to be about 2 inches in diameter. These are a little bit larger. These are grown specifically for stuffing. And I'm going to de-stem the mushrooms as the first step. So I place the mushroom on top of the cutting board like this. And then I'm going to carve not just of the inside of the mushroom. So we're taking out a chunk about like that, and we're creating.
Do you ever de-stem the mushrooms just by using lateral pressure on the stem?
Yeah, you can just kind of use lateral pressure on the stem to kind of snap them off this way. But I like to get a little bit more of the
Right, you cut a bigger hole. It's a neat trick.
Yes, I cut a bigger hole, so I'm just kind of making a boat with a relatively thin liner.
Excellent.
Around the perimeter of this, and that way I can get more of the filling, the stuffing inside of here, which is really what I'm after. So if you're doing the baby portobello mushrooms, 1 pound will make about 20 of these mushrooms, about 2 inches in diameter. The larger mushrooms for stuffing, you'll have about 12 of these mushrooms. And then in the food processor, we take our mushroom stems and we place them in there. And to that, we also add 1 cup of roughly chopped carrots, 1 cup of roughly chopped celery root. And we add 2 sprigs of fresh rosemary, along with 1 clove of garlic. And then we're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of mustard seed powder, of ground cumin, and 1 tablespoon or 3 teaspoons of this Italian seasoning, which is a combination of sage and basil and rosemary and marjoram and thyme. And then we're going to process. We're going to roughly chop using the S-blade in the food processor. Occasionally stopping to scrape the sides until we have our vegetables and our seeds chopped into about rice-sized pieces. Okay, so once you're finished with the S-blade and the food processor here, then you're going to have sort of a filling that looks about like that. And then we're going to use this to stuff our mushrooms. So I just start spooning this in. And we're not going to pile it high. So we're going to just kind of have it about, the filling is going to be about level with the rim of each one of the mushrooms. And I'm going to place them on this serving platter here and finish the rest of them off in the same way.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, we have a question from the audience. Please ask away.
Are we using lemons in there?
Oh, actually, we're going to be using the lemon in the topping.
Okay.
So no need for lemons.
And did you put the red onion right into? Oh,
Well, we haven't gotten to the
okay.
red onion yet.
Somebody just
The red onion is,
know if it was in the stuffing.
okay. Yeah, okay, so the stuffing is just carrots, celery root, and pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, 2 sprigs of fresh rosemary, and then 1 clove of garlic, and 1/4 teaspoon of mustard seed powder, 1/4 teaspoon of cumin, and 3 teaspoons or a tablespoon of Italian seasoning. So we haven't used the onion yet, or the pine nuts. That's going to be the 3rd step. So the first step in this recipe, there's 3 steps, is to prepare the mushrooms with, kind of hollowing them out. And then the 2nd step is making the filling, which is what we've just done, and then stuffing the mushrooms. And then the 3rd step will be making the garnish, or the cream, if you will, which is going to go on top.
Brian, if I could interrupt your flow one more time.
Yeah,
Did you
sure.
say a cup of carrots or a pound of carrots?
It's actually 1
1
cup
cup of
of
carrots.
carrots. Yeah, so you have to kind of roughly chop them up a little bit to help out with the chopping process in the food processor. So I cut them into about 1/2 inch or 1 inch size chunks. And then that also helps measure out 1 cup.
Thank you.
So fit into the measuring cup a little bit better. Good questions, though. Thank you very much. Keep them coming. As the questions roll in the text box. How's our internet connection? Is it better this time?
At the moment, it's where you're going strong.
Okay, excellent. Okay. Just a few more mushrooms to stuff, and we'll be ready for the next step here.
So, and I am doing without my stuffing, without food processor. I just shred everything. Mine looks a little bit different, not as good as yours, but
That's okay.
that's what it is.
Yeah, if you don't have a food processor, you can certainly use the manual shredder on the finest setting, and you'll get very similar results.
Just different color.
Yeah, different color. So the secret to all sauces, all gravies, all dressings are the 4 flavors, the 4 primary flavors, which is salty, sweet, sour, and bitter. And some people will say there's a 5th flavor, which is called savory or umami. And the salty in this recipe is going to be the celery root, and the bitter is going to be the red onion. The sour is going to be the lemon juice. And then the, what am I missing here? The sweet is in the carrots. So those 4 primary flavors, when you have them in the correct proportions, so that one is not dominant over the others, that's what makes recipes pop. That's what makes sauces and gravies and dressings taste good. It gives it that gourmet flavor. Okay. So the next step is we're going to make our cream sauce. And I'm going to start with some pine nuts. And if you'll excuse me 1 second, I'm going to get the rest of them. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So we're going to be using for our cream sauce on the top, 1 cup of pine nuts into the Vitamix. There we go. And then we're going to use a tablespoon of lemon juice, fresh squeezed. So typically, if you cut a lemon in half, if it's a large lemon, you'll get about a tablespoon out of 1/2 of that lemon. If it's a small lemon, then you might need both halves. This is a a relatively small lemon. So I'm going to use both halves in here. Okay, and then we're going to put in some water. If you have a juicer, you can use celery juice for this stuff, about 1/4 cup of water. And then we're going to blend. So we're going to blend until we have a creamy consistency. And I like to, in this recipe, I like it to be sort of like a cream like that, which means that you're going to have to blend it slowly so that the cream doesn't cavitate inside the blender. This is, of course, a Vitamix blender, which is very popular in the raw food community. It's a high-speed, high-power blender, so it's more versatile. The other blender that's popular in the raw vegan community, of course, is the Blendtec. And I like them both for different reasons. The Vitamix is my preference, though. I like the Vitamix because it comes with a tamper tool like this, which is convenient for some of the recipes. And when you're making things that need it, and by placing the top on like this, there's a rim around the top of the tamper. So as you're blending, the rim will prevent the tamper from going too deep so that the bottom of the tamper doesn't actually come into contact with the blades. Pine nuts are soft enough that we really don't need the tamper as long as you're going at a slow enough speed. The Vitamix is also available with a specific spatula, which is designed just for the pitcher of the Vitamix. It allows you to get down between the blades to get every little last bit of your cream sauce.
Hey, Brian, would you do us a favor and tell us what's in that sauce one more time?
Yes. So what's in the sauce is 1 cup of pine nuts, 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, and 1/4 of a cup of water. And that's it.
Have you tried the new Blendtec with the sound control dome?
No, I haven't.
Oh my
I've
God.
seen them.
I've always been a Vitamix fan, always. But with this new technology on the Blendtec, they just took a step into the future.
Really? Okay.
Fantastic machine.
That's good to know. Thank you for sharing, Dr. Graham. I have not used it yet, but I'll have to check it out.
When I get home, I'm going to put my Vitamix up for sale
Really?
because the Blendtec just blew them away.
Oh, okay. Nice. You know,
But with every Blendtec I've ever tried before, I've always been thrilled to own a Vitamix.
Uh-huh. Okay, that's good to know. You know, one of the things I like about the Blendtec is that the pitcher is wider and shorter, so it fits underneath countertops. Now, Vitamix has come out with a new version of their blender, which is also wider and shorter in response to that, I suspect. And so I'm just smoothing out the cream sauce on top of each stuffed mushroom here, so that it's got a little bit of a dome to it, but it covers all of the stuffing like this. So now we're kind of working on the presentation portion of it. Any questions from the audience that we can answer while we're doing this? How's my speed? Is everybody able to keep up, or should I slow down a little bit?
You're doing fine.
Okay.
Brian, some people missed the red onion. Was that added to the mixture or yet or no?
That's yet to come.
Okay,
So we have
thank you.
You
Yeah.
have red onion and rosemary and something else yet to come, right?
Yes, red onion, rosemary, and red bell pepper. We're going to garnish our
Exactly.
stuffed mushrooms.
Exactly. Okay, Emily, that should work for you.
Okay. That finishes the topping, and so the last step is we're going to create a bit of a garnish, just to sprinkle on top of our stuffed mushrooms. So I'm going to start, sorry? With my red bell pepper.
Do you enjoy the meditative side of the repeat? Like the mushrooms is very much a repeat process, right? You do it over and over and over. You're making 20, 30, 40, 50 mushrooms at a time. Some people really hate doing that, and some people really love doing that.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, for me, it is a meditative sort of a thing. I like to connect with my food. I consider raw foods to be food from the gods, and it's kind of a spiritual practice for me when I'm preparing raw food. And I'm very grateful for what this lifestyle has done for me, and I'm grateful for I look for things to be grateful for throughout the day, and I'm certainly grateful for the food. I am a master grower as well, and so I'm very familiar with the growing process of things like red bell peppers and mushrooms and carrots and all of these other things that we're using here, onions and celery roots. Okay, so I'm basically dicing my red bell pepper here, and you'll need about a half of a red bell pepper to create the garnish that we like to use here on this recipe. So dicing is smaller than chopping. We want very small chunks for this, a little bit larger than rice flakes. And then we're going to take our diced red bell pepper, and we're just going to kind of drizzle this on top of each one of the mushrooms here. Part of the reason for this is, well, besides the flavor and nutrition, but also to create a little bit of color. We eat with our eyes first, so I like to make things look appealing, makes them more appetizing. It actually makes them taste better. I love you. Thank you for creating nutrition for me. That's my grateful side coming out here. Okay, and then a little bit of red onion minced in the same way, about the same size as the red bell pepper. So you'll need about a half or a quarter of a red bell pepper. I'm sorry, of a red onion. And this is to provide a little bit of contrast in the color of the garnish that's going on top of the stuffed mushrooms. Onions can be sweet. They can also be a bit strong or pungent. So one of the ways that you can actually still have the sweet flavor of onions without the overwhelming pungent nature is to soak your onions in cold water for 10 minutes or so. Actually, ice cold water. So you would get a bowl and you would take your minced onion like this and place it in a bowl of ice cold water, maybe with a little bit of lemon juice. That also helps take some of the strong flavor down a notch from the onion while still maintaining the sweetness.
Another way to do that for people who wish to is to put them on a Paraflex sheet on your dehydrator, chop them, put them on a Paraflex sheet, leave them on for 10 to 15 minutes, just so the warm wind blows past it. And it will blow off all the toxic, what are called the volatile oils of the onion, while leaving a sweet onion back behind you.
That's an excellent point. Thank you, Dr. Graham. So I'm just kind of drizzling, the minced onion to create a little design here. And then I'm going to take a little bit more of my rosemary and chop that really small particles and add that to my garnish here. Again, for the color contrast. So I'm de-stemming my rosemary here. Okay. And I just drizzle a little bit of this chopped fresh rosemary on top, like this. Now, we can actually eat them just like this, or we can dehydrate them for a couple of hours. And that's going to add another dimension to the experience of the stuffed mushrooms. And the dehydrator is going to create a little bit of a crispy crust on the cream sauce on top and on the vegetables on top. And but you can eat them just like this. And these stuffed mushrooms kind of have a flavor that's a little bit reminiscent of Thanksgiving stuffing. So we're just a few weeks, really a couple weeks away from Thanksgiving. So I thought like the Italian stuffed mushrooms might be a nice thing to present today. And that's it. You're finished. So we're ready to eat. And oh, look at this beautiful presentation. Okay, so Larissa was preparing her food concurrently along with mine. And she's got this beautiful presentation on this platter here. Good
It's my
job,
stuffed
Larissa.
mushroom pie for today. I'm competing with that amazing chef. Brian, that was amazing, and there's a lot of good tips. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And definitely your new skills here and new details, and it looks spectacular. I mean, who wouldn't like to bring that dish to a Thanksgiving gathering, knowing that's basically no guilt food and you can eat all of them and feel good
Right.
after
Exactly.
that.
Exactly.
So thank you, Brian. That was great and awesome as usual, as always. Great recipe, great presentation, very good directions.
If I'm starting to cry, it's because of the onions. It's not because of Larissa's praise here, but actually it might be a little bit of both. Thank you, Larissa.
So, and what I would like to basically tell that thank you everyone for spending this hour with us today and making this awesome looking food and good tasting and good for you food.